I've been working at this airport for about 5 years now, and let me tell you, it's been quite a ride. I started off as a fresh-faced college grad with a degree in aviation management, dreaming of someday running my own airport. Little did I know that my first job would teach me more about dealing with entitled people than actual airport operations. Our little regional airport isn't much to look at, but it's got character. We handle mostly private planes and the occasional small commercial flight. It's a tight-knit community here, and everyone knows everyone else's business. That's how I first heard about the infamous pilot jerk. This guy, I swear he's like a storm cloud that never goes away. From the moment he started renting a hangar here, he's been nothing but trouble. Always complaining, always demanding special treatment, and always making everyone's life miserable. I remember the first time I encountered him. It was my second week on the job, and I was still learning the ropes. He came storming into the office, face red as a tomato, screaming about how we'd scratched his precious plane during routine maintenance. Turns out, the scratch was just a smudge that wiped right off. But did he apologize? Nah, he just huffed and puffed and threatened to sue us all. Since then, it's been one thing after another with this guy. He's yelled at our ground crew for not rolling out a red carpet for him. I wish I was joking. He's tried to skip the line for refueling by claiming he had an emergency. Spoiler alert, he didn't. And he's even called the police on us once because we wouldn't let him take off during a severe thunderstorm. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that stormy August day. When I clocked in for my shift, the airport looked like it had been hit by a hurricane. Debris everywhere, hail damage on everything, and half our systems were down. My boss had us all running around like headless chickens, trying to get things back in order. We were in the middle of a crisis meeting when we heard it. This ungodly scream that could only belong to one person. My coworker asked if we had heard that noise. I groaned, hoping it wasn't who I thought it was. Another coworker volunteered to go check it out. He came back a minute later laughing so hard he could barely stand. I asked him what was so funny and he managed to choke out that it was the jerkwad and we had to see it for ourselves. Curious, we all headed outside. And let me tell you, what I saw was better than any karma I could have imagined. Pilot Jerk's hangar looked like it had been hit by a tornado. The skylight and roof fan were completely gone, leaving two gaping holes in the ceiling. His precious plane was covered in dents from the hail, and there was debris scattered all over the place. The best part? His was the only hangar that got hit this badly. Pilot Jerk was screaming about how unacceptable this was, pointing at his damaged plane and equipment and blaming us for what happened. I tried to calm him down, explaining that this was an act of nature and we couldn't control the weather. He wasn't having it, yelling about how we should have better infrastructure and how he pays good money to rent the hangar. My co-worker tried to point out that all the other hangars were fine, and his was just unlucky. This only made Pilot Jerk angrier, and he threatened to sue the entire airport into the ground. He kept ranting and raving, his face getting redder by the second. Meanwhile, we were all trying our best not to burst out laughing. I offered to help clean up and assess the damage to his plane, mentioning we could also contact our insurance company about the hangar damage. Pilot Jerk refused our help, demanding that we fix everything immediately. My boss had to step in, explaining that it wasn't possible right now due to airport-wide damage and systems failures. He told Pilot Jerk that his hangar would have to wait. Pilot Jerk couldn't believe it, asking if we knew who he was and claiming to be our biggest customer. My boss respectfully disagreed, saying he was one of many customers and we needed to focus on getting the airport operational again. This sent Pilot Jerk into another rage, threatening to have all our jobs. As he continued his tantrum, throwing things around his already messy hangar, we quietly retreated back to our office. Once inside, we all lost it. I commented on how I thought Pilot Jerk's face was going to explode. My coworker remarked on karma being real, and how it was about time Pilot Jerk got a taste of his own medicine after all he'd put us through. My boss tried to calm us down, reminding us we still had a job to do, but even he couldn't hide his smirk. For the rest of the day, we could hear Pilot Jerk cursing and yelling as he tried to clean up his hangar. Every now and then, one of us would peek out to check on him, always coming back with a new funny story to share. By the end of my shift, Pilot Jerk was still at it. His plane was still a mess, his hangar looked like a war zone, and he had made exactly zero progress in cleaning up. As I was leaving, I wished him a good night and better luck tomorrow. The look he gave me could have melted steel, but I just smiled and walked away. For once, the entitled jerk got what was coming to him, and I couldn't have been happier. And if Pilot Jerk ever asks, I'll just tell him it was an act of nature. Can't control the weather, right? When I was 10, my dad took me to watch a local BMX race, and I was instantly hooked. The speed, the jumps, the adrenaline, it was everything a kid could dream of. I begged my parents for a bike, and after months of chores and good grades, they finally got me one for my 11th birthday. From that day on, I was obsessed. I practiced every chance I got, watched countless YouTube tutorials, and even convinced my parents to build a small track in our backyard. By the time I turned 14, I was pretty good. I'd won a few local competitions and was part of a team. That's where this whole mess began. It was just another practice day at the track. I was working on my cornering technique, pushing myself to go faster with each lap. As I approached the concrete corner at full speed, I suddenly saw a young kid standing right in my path. There was no time to stop. Boom! I crashed into him hard. My heart was racing, more from fear for the kid than from the impact. I quickly got up, ignoring the stinging pain all over my body. I asked the little dude if he was okay. He replied that he was fine, just a little scraped up, and asked if I was all right. That's when the pain hit me like a truck. I looked down and saw I was scraped up badly and bleeding. My legs gave out and I collapsed to the ground. The nice kid helped me prop myself up against the nearby jump. As I sat there trying to catch my breath, I saw a woman storming towards us. The woman, who I'll call Karen, accused me of hitting her kid. When I didn't understand at first, she repeated herself slowly and loudly as if I couldn't hear her. I asked her to get me the first aid kit, saying we could talk later. She refused, demanding that I apologize to her son immediately. I agreed to apologize but pleaded for help first. Karen then declared she was taking my bike as compensation. Now, you need to understand, my bike isn't just any bike. It's a $2,000 custom-built machine that I've been upgrading piece by piece with my competition winnings. And I was still clipped into it, waiting for our team captain to arrive. This crazy woman grabbed my bike and started pulling. The sudden movement twisted my ankle and I screamed in pain. The nice kid tried to stop his mom, telling her she was hurting me. Karen coldly said she didn't care, saying that since I hurt her son, they deserved my bike. I finally managed to unclip my foot, just as our training coach arrived on the scene. The coach asked what was going on. Karen accused me of stealing her son's bike. My coach denied this, explaining that he had driven me to the track himself. He took my bike back and came to check on me. Karen threatened to call the police for theft. My coach calmly told her to go ahead, so she actually called the police. While we waited, my coach bandaged me up. When the cops arrived, things got even crazier. One cop asked what was happening. Karen lied, claiming I had purposely crashed into her kid, stolen his bike, and that my coach had attacked her when she tried to take it back. I quickly explained the truth, that her kid was standing on the corner, I didn't see him, crashed into him by accident, and then she tried to take my bike. The cops went to take her statement, then came back to me. They asked if I could prove the bike was mine. I told them it was my phone's background, and that I had pictures of it. I showed them the evidence, and my coach backed me up. Meanwhile, Karen was getting louder and more aggressive with the other cop. They ended up handcuffing her for attempted theft and assault. The cop asked if I wanted to press charges. I eagerly agreed. My coach stayed with me until I got home. Later, my parents took me to the station to file a formal complaint. The whole thing was surreal. A few days later, we found out that Karen was charged with attempted theft, assault, and filing a false police report. She ended up with community service and a hefty fine. The judge also ordered her to pay for the damage to my bike and my medical bills. The track owners banned her from the premises, but invited her son to join our junior training program for free. Turns out the kid had been begging to learn BMX, but Karen always said no. Now, he's one of our most enthusiastic junior riders, and I'm teaching him everything I know. I may have gotten a few scars from that day, but I also gained a new riding buddy and an even deeper appreciation for my BMX family. I've been working at a GameStop store for about 2 years, starting as a part-time sales associate while finishing up my degree in computer science. The flexible hours were perfect for my class schedule, and hey, I got to be around video games all day. Win-win, right? After graduation, I had planned to dive right into the tech industry, but then the pandemic hit, and suddenly entry-level programming jobs were as rare as a mint-condition NS. So I stuck around at GameStop, eventually working my way up to full-time. When our assistant store manager went on leave for surgery recovery, I was a natural choice to fill in. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills and kept me in the loop with the latest gaming news. Plus, I figured the management experience would look good on my resume when I eventually made the jump to software development. Little did I know that this temporary promotion would lead to one of the most bizarre encounters of my retail career. It was a quiet spring evening and I was manning the store alone. Earlier that day, a customer had come in and bought a brand new cobalt blue PS3 controller. Nothing out of the ordinary there. But then, a few hours later, the same guy walked in with a kid in tow. I recognized him immediately. He had a distinctive tattoo on his neck that was hard to miss. As soon as I saw the controller box in his hand and the crumpled receipt, I knew something was up. The guy approached the counter, trying to look casual but clearly in a hurry. He asked for a refund on the controller, explaining that he'd bought it earlier for his son's birthday, but someone else had gotten the color his son wanted. He said they needed to leave soon and just wanted their money back. The kid chimed in, boasting about getting a red controller instead, claiming it was much better. I could tell from his smug look that something wasn't right. I tried to be sympathetic, remembering our return policy. New items had to be unopened for a full refund, but I thought this would be a quick and easy transaction. I told the customer it shouldn't be an issue, mentioning that I remembered seeing him earlier when I came in for my shift. However, as I picked up the box to scan it, I noticed small groove marks near the seal stickers. Upon closer inspection, it was clear the stickers had been partially lifted. I hesitantly explained to the customer that we could only give a full refund for new items if they remained unopened. The customer's attitude changed instantly. He demanded to know what I meant, insisting that he'd bought the controller from us and that the receipt said he could get a refund. His voice took on an edge as he spoke. I tried to explain calmly, pointing out the obvious signs of tampering on the box. The customer wasn't having it. He leaned in, clearly trying to intimidate me, and argued that he'd just been in the store and that it wasn't his problem. Standing my ground, I showed him the return policy on the back of the receipt. I explained that while the box looked new and matched the item on the receipt, the seal stickers were damaged. I told him I couldn't resell it as new and that this was all outlined in our policy. The customer's frustration was evident. He was trying to keep his cool, but I could tell he was close to losing it. He demanded his refund, saying he had the receipt and shouldn't have to deal with this. That's when I decided to call his bluff. I opened the box right there on the counter and took out the controller. The evidence was impossible to ignore. The X button was coated in what looked like chicken tender grease, and there was visible grime in the seams of the controller. I pointed this out to the customer, asking if he wanted to change his story. The customer was shocked, his jaw dropping. He demanded to speak to a manager, clearly not believing what was happening. The kid behind him looked horrified, probably realizing their little scheme had been caught out. I informed the customer that I was the acting assistant store manager and that the controller was obviously used and couldn't be sold as new. The customer grabbed the box and receipt from the counter, fuming. He started ranting about how much he'd spent at our store over the years and demanded our corporate number. He threatened to go to another store down the road and insisted that I should be fired, complaining about how this was happening on his way home from his kid's party. I calmly retrieved our corporate contact information and wrote it on the back of a business card. As I handed it over, I couldn't resist one last jab, asking if there was anything else I could help him with today. The customer stormed out, dragging his kid along. As the door was closing, I heard the kid say something that confirmed my suspicions about their planned scam. Not wanting to let this slide, I immediately called the other GameStop store down the road, which happened to be our district manager's home store. I explained the situation to the manager on duty, giving them a heads up about the potential troublemaker heading their way. To my satisfaction, not only did the customer never return to our store, but the district manager later told me he never heard from them either. As a precaution, cash returns for that customer's power-up account were banned in our store system. It turned out this wasn't an isolated incident. The customer had been trying to pull similar stunts across the district, and our little interaction put a stop to his schemes. Me and my friend lived together after college. Our landlord was really strict. She'd always come check on us without telling us first. She'd leave notes about little things, like if we had dirty dishes. We went on a trip to the beach, cleaning our place really well before we left. When we got back, we got a huge shock. We opened the door and all our stuff was gone. We thought maybe someone robbed us. Then our landlord showed up. She said she sold our things. She said our rental agreement let her do that. She said our furniture wasn't good enough. The landlord brought in new, fancy furniture. She said we had to pay double rent now for these improvements. We were so angry. We told her this was crazy and against the law. We called the police. While we waited, we took pictures and talked to our neighbors. We found out the landlord had been doing bad stuff to other people too. When the police came, they didn't help much at first. But then they saw something. The landlord was wearing a watch that looked like mine. My grandpa gave it to me. The police checked and found out it really was my stolen watch. They arrested the landlord. We got a lawyer to help us. We found out the landlord tricked us. She added fake stuff to our rental agreement after we signed it. In the end, the landlord got in big trouble. We got most of our stuff back. For the things we couldn't find, she had to pay us money. The building got a new manager. Everyone who lived there had a party to celebrate. Me and my friend used some of the money to move to a new place. We read our new rental agreement very carefully before signing it. We learned to be more careful with landlords and to always keep copies of important papers. We also learned it's important to stand up for yourself when someone's treating you unfairly. It was a hard time, but it made me and my friend closer. We helped each other through it and were happy when things worked out. We still talk about our crazy landlord stories sometimes. It reminds us how strong we can be when we work together and don't give up.